Hello, my name is Sam Feltham and welcome to Expert Interviews here on Smash the Fat. With me today is paleo food blogger and cookbook author of Eat, Drink, Paleo, Irena Macri. How you doing, Irena?
I'm good. Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, not a problem at all. Now, as I just kind of mentioned there, you are the author and blogger of Eat, Drink, Paleo,
I've got the
which,
printed one
and
because
you got the printed one right there.
I
Oh,
know
that's all good.
it's coming to you, but you probably haven't got it yet. So,
Oh, not quite yet, not quite yet, but it's all good. As you can see here, I've got the Kindle version, well, the PDF version, and it's a beautiful book, as you're kind of sort of showing there. Absolutely beautifully put together. And you're also the paleo food blogger at eatdrinkpaleo.com.au, where people can kind of check out all of your info right there. But before we kind of get into all of that, first I wanted to find out, how exactly did you kind of get into this paleo world and start kind of blogging about cooking and food and
yeah,
things like that?
yeah, sure. Well, I guess I started out, the best way to tell this story is, I mean, I've always been interested in food and cooking. That's something that's been a passion of mine since I was sort of little girl. So I've always known that at some point in my life I will do cooking as a job or as a career. I mean, it took me about 30 years to get there, but I did eventually. And so I used to work in a digital media space, sort of in media and corporate for quite a few years, and did the typical career climbing, from one role to another, and getting pretty sort of running the rat race. And sort of fitness and well-being has always been a passion of mine and a hobby. I've always been interested in that. And a few years ago, I got interested in the 4-Hour Body book by Tim Ferriss, which is not paleo or primal, but it's about sort of low carb eating, and I mean, it just made me ask questions about my health and well-being and how I eat differently. And so that was my first introduction to the low carb way of eating, I suppose. And at the same time, friends of mine were experimenting with paleo. And on the background of all that story is my mum got sick, and she was, a fairly healthy lady, and she's in her sort of late 50s, and she had 2 cancers back to back. And, I had a bit of a wake-up call of, what can I do now to I guess, to bulletproof my health and well-being so that I can prevent, or at least prolong my health into the future. And, luckily she's in a remission now, but it has made me question my own choices. And paleo came into my life right at the same time. And, I'm very curious by nature, so I read lots of blogs and books about it, and a lot of it made sense to me because it's just a natural way of eating, and I was just like, bingo, why haven't we thought of this before? And so, yeah, the more I researched, the more I read about it, I've kind of tailored the framework to suit my own lifestyle, and my blog became a documentation of my own journey as a cook and also as a paleo enthusiast and an advocate. And I guess I started it because I wanted to show people that paleo is not meat and 3 veg. It's not what people have this kind of preconceived myth and idea of what paleo is. It's not just meat. And, I basically photographed what I ate, and I just wanted to show people, actually, it's just about eating really good food, made with fresh produce, with herbs and spices, lots of flavor, not being afraid of using different ingredients, new ingredients. And that's how it started out.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said before, you kind of put together this beautiful, creative culinary cookbook. Because as you kind of mentioned there, it's not just about kind of meat and 3 veg and things like that. You can get really kind of creative and experimental with real food that could have, relates to a paleo kind of lifestyle. Now, for those that haven't heard of paleo or even primal or anything like that. What exactly does this mean?
Okay, so paleo refers to a way of eating and living, I suppose, that is inspired by our ancestors or hunter-gatherer ancestors. It's not a way of mimicking. I just want to make that really clear. It's not about mimicking our ancestors.
Yeah.
We're not hunting for animals. We're not fishing, and we're not foraging in the forest. Although that's part of the lifestyle, and it's very highly encouraged that you try and go and get your own food. But it's basically looking at what our ancestors did right, because a lot of the current diseases that we're experiencing, from cardiovascular and obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, they're all modern diseases. They didn't exist even 10,000 years ago. So how did we live for millions of years without them, and what contributed to us developing these new diseases? And so we'll look at our ancestors to see what they ate and how they lived, how they behaved, how they slept, and we then apply the current research and studies and sort of combine that into a framework or set of principles that is called Paleo. And as far as the diet is concerned, it's going back to the way we used to eat and the way our even grandparents used to eat, maybe not the hunter-gatherers. And so it's things like excluding the processed industrial oils, for example, so the canola, the soybean, vegetable corn oils, and all the foods that they contain, because they're in so many things. It's amazing. It's processed and refined grains, too much sugar and carbohydrates. So kind of going back to natural way of eating, which is protein, so animal, fish and seafood, lots of vegetables, some fruit and berries, some nuts and seeds, lots of healthy fats from the animal fats, as well as olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, things that are less processed, they're cold pressed. So it's basically, just excluding processed food. That's probably the easiest way of saying it. If it comes in a packet and has been refined and processed, that's certainly something that our grandparents wouldn't recognize, and so it's not necessarily good for us. And so paleo basically is that framework, and it's something that people can then adapt themselves. Your question was before, you also mentioned primal, for example. And primal is sort of a deviation of paleo, which was just coined a different name for the same thing. It's like same but different, right? Mm-hmm. So some people eat primal, which is a little bit more flexible and allows them to have a little bit more dairy, and the sort of the healthy kind of dairy, whether it's raw dairy, full fat, unsweetened, fermented. Some more natural sweeteners, a little bit of rice, that sort of thing. But essentially, it's just a way of eating whole foods, real foods that came from the ground, from the sea, from the trees, from the air.
Absolutely, and that's kind of like the consistent message kind of through the paleo primal community, is that it's about kind of real food, and as you kind of eloquently said there, it's not necessarily about mimicking, and it certainly isn't about mimicking what our ancestors did, because they didn't necessarily have broccoli or anything like that.
No, not at all.
But the whole point is that it's kind of a real food approach, which is what they would have had to have done back in the Paleolithic era. So with that in mind, kind of like the background about what paleo and primal is, what does the diet kind of include, and what doesn't it include, kind of specifically?
Okay, if we specifically, so when we're talking about paleo, sort of 100% clean paleo, it's no grains, and by grains we mean wheat, rye, barley, millet, corn, lentils, no lentils or no grains, so no beans, no lentils, legumes of any sort of type of form. Do you want me to talk about why they're excluded?
Yeah, sure. Let's get into the
detail. So grains and legumes, one of the things that we're trying to avoid is to cut down the level of carbohydrates we consume. We're not trying to cut out carbohydrates, because we do need them. It's just that we eat a lot more that we actually need. And so carbohydrates then turn into fat, triglycerides. So we're not using it, and it's a very inflammatory way of eating. So too much sugar, and specifically refined sugar, not the natural kind from honey or maple, but refined sugar, refined carbohydrates, Omega-6, high omega-6 oils, which are soybean, canola, corn, vegetable, grapeseed oils. Lots of the seed oils, which are sort of known more as healthy oils, they actually, if consumed in high amounts, are very inflammatory because they have high amounts of omega-6 pro-inflammatory fatty acids. At the same time, we don't eat enough fish to counteract that. So paleo is about excluding foods that are, I suppose, inflammatory, really, in the kind of essence. So it's the grains and legumes because they are really high in carbohydrates, and also they contain anti-nutrients, which some of them are lectins, which can irritate our digestive lining, causing malabsorption, leaky gut, poor gut flora, and things like that. And the other one is phytic acid or phytates, and that can bind to minerals in our body and, again, prevent their absorption. So they're the main reasons to exclude those, and mainly because we didn't really used to eat these foods, Many would argue that we need grains and legumes because, they contain nutrients that are essential, but actually you can get all of the essential nutrients from meat and plant-based diet. So grains and legumes are the two things. Then the processed oils, which I just mentioned, and sugar. Dairy is excluded as well, mainly because dairy, we're the only mammals that drink milk from another mammal, essentially. I think genetically some cultures are better suited to dairy than others. I'm Ukrainian, I'm from the sort of Central Europe where cattle has been cultivated for a long time. We've had dairy around for a very long time. So I can probably digest it better than, say, Asian cultures or maybe some of the South American cultures. If you go down to some of the African tribes, they drink a lot of milk. So dairy is one of those sort of grey areas where in the clean paleo it's excluded mainly because it is a little bit inflammatory and it can cause some issues for people. So they're the main things: dairy, grains, legumes, processed seed and oils, sugars. Things that are included and advocated, lots of protein, and again from really good sources. So we're talking about meat from grass-fed cattle, free-range eggs, and poultry, pork, sustainable fish and seafood, wild if possible, vegetables, lots of vegetables, lots of starchy and non-starchy vegetables. So you can be more low-carb paleo or more high-carb paleo, in which case you'll eat more bananas, more tubers such as sweet potatoes, parsnips, celeriacs, beetroot, carrot, etc. So lots of veggies. I would say probably 70% of the paleo diet is vegetables, unlike the popular belief. And it's kind of like a side of meat, basically. And then, some fruit when it's in season, berries, some nuts and seeds here and there, and lots of healthy fats. We're going back to eating butter again. How fantastic is that? Lard, cooking in duck. I mean, that tastes amazing. Avocados, coconut oil, coconut milk, coconut cream. I no longer go to the restaurants and go, oh, curries, and so much fat in that. Now I just embrace it now. So all those things are included, and things like alcohol and coffee and little treats and chocolates. I mean, that's kind of a personal choice, I think, and we all need to live a little bit. So it's fine if you have a little bit of red wine or black coffee if you like that. Some people prefer not to have that at all because they feel better, but I think that's a personal framework, I suppose.
Yeah, it is very much kind of personal choice, and in your book there as well, you kind of go on about your 80-20 philosophy to this approach, because kind of to some people that might sound really restrictive and things like that. So kind of tell us about your 80-20 philosophy and kind of your philosophy about putting this paleo framework into a modern world.
Yeah, the easiest way to think about it is I always say to people that if you try to be too strict and too dogmatic about being paleo, it's not very sustainable long term. At some point in time you will fall off the wagon, and then you will make yourself feel so guilty and stressed about it that you're going to cause more negative effects on your health than by eating well. So for me, the 20% is that 80% of the time I eat pretty clean paleo, and I cook at home a lot. So I find that when I'm at home, I will eat paleo way of eating because I can control what's in my pantry, what's in my fridge, and what goes into my food. When I go out, that's when I make certain exemptions. And, often when I travel or when I'm going out with friends, I will allow myself to have white rice. So sushi is a great option for when you're trying to sort of eat on the road. I will have things like, maybe corn chips and salsa if I'm going to a Mexican restaurant. I will have a little bit of gluten-free dessert, so maybe it's a creme brulee every now and then, And certainly, I enjoy a glass of wine with my dinner, and I love trying new things. So for me, it's more of a, if that 20% is things that I know that in small amounts are not going to affect my health very much. And I have to put a caveat there because I'm not, seriously allergic to things like gluten, for example, or casein in milk. For some people, they have to avoid those at all costs, all the time. And so, that's a different situation. But for me, that 20% can include things like an occasional slice of sourdough, which is, once in a while, which I think is fine because for me as a cook, I need to try those things so that I can then somehow recreate them in a way that's paleo friendly, with different types of flours. So I'd say it's for research as much as for pleasure.
That's a good way to look at it. Good way to look at it.
But that's the 20%. So I think everybody has to make their own choice. Some people can't afford to eat grass-fed meat all the time. So it's fine. Just go for the best next choice that you can get. It's the same with vegetables and fruit. Some people can't afford organic fruit and vegetables, and so they can use the dirty dozen, where there are certain fruit and vegetables that are worse off than others, and then make sure that you wash them with a little bit of apple cider vinegar and water. So I think that 20% is something that it's a personal paleo code, as Chris Kresser puts it. It's something you have to define, and the best way to do it is to do maybe like a 30-day paleo challenge or a 30-day paleo plan where you kind of try to be more or less 100% clean paleo, and then you reintroduce certain foods back, and you see how you feel, because you might, I handle dairy really well, as I said before. So we've got butter in the fridge. I often have, just plain Greek yogurt. I love kefir and things like that. So I include a lot of probiotic foods. And so in that respect, cheese and things like that is something that I can have with no problems. But for other people, it is a problem. So I can understand why they kind of have to go everything or nothing. So
absolutely, and that's kind of what it comes down to. Again, the paleo kind of lifestyle is an individual quest.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as you said there, Chris Kresser kind of goes on about your personal paleo code, is that you kind of start off with this base foundation that helps you kind of discover what works best for your health. And that's kind of the major thing with paleo. It's not really just about fat loss or anything like that. It's about health and having the healthiest body possible.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, and the other thing that I always said to people, to me, paleo is all about keeping the inflammation down. And I always keep reiterating it because people often associate paleo with weight loss or, trying to get musclier for CrossFit or, some other reasons. But to me, it's, I've seen people heal with paleo diet. I've seen them sort of, reverse a lot of the conditions that they have, chronic conditions. For me personally, I know that when I eat more or less paleo, most of the time, my body inflammation is low because I don't get as many colds or flus or any other sort of regular things that I would normally get. And they've just become almost, extinct for me. So I know as soon as I get a flu or a cold, I know that my immune system's been compromised, and it's because I've been eating shit or I've been stressing or I haven't slept enough. And it's amazing that since I've gone paleo, I've become so in tune with my own body. And I think from people that I've spoken to, they experience the same kind of transition, is that you really start to feel and kind of understand how your body feels.
Absolutely. That's kind of one of the biggest things, is starting to be able to listen to your body, because the fake foods that are out there, the sugar, refined carbohydrates, and the highly processed oils, kind of almost make your body hard of hearing, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely.
It kind of switches off your senses almost, and then when you start taking a real food approach, it kind of opens up your eyes and ears, in a metaphorical sense in terms of your body's senses, and you start to kind of feel where your body should be going at that moment in your life. And that's kind of one of the good things I think the paleo community kind of give to the health and fitness industry. Now again, people might kind of sort of feel that it's really restrictive and things like that, but as you can sort of see here, you've got some really beautiful kind of photos of food.
Yeah.
Of meals and things like that. It's kind of absolutely wonderful, like, to see these meals that are beautifully photographed, but then they're also kind of really wholesome and nutritious meals. So kind of what does your daily diet kind of look like yourself?
Okay, I'll tell you what I had this morning. That might be the easiest. So
yeah.
This will probably be representative of most mornings, but we usually have I'll have 2 pan-fried eggs, and I usually pan-fry them in coconut oil or butter or ghee, and we'll have a side of avocado, and I like to ferment my own pickles, a sort of sauerkraut, or I'll buy kimchi from Asian supermarkets, and so I'll have a side of kimchi or sauerkraut. If I have some bacon in the house, again, I know paleo people go crazy over bacon, and I love bacon, but we don't have it every morning. Again, that's another myth. So we'll have some bacon if we have it. But otherwise, I often do this really good, cool dish. It's called sweet potato rosti, and you grate sweet potato and you pan fry it in butter or ghee for about 10 minutes, 5 minutes on each side, and I season it with garlic and onion powder and salt and pepper and some green onions. And it's delicious. It sort of gets caramelized on both sides, and it's a little bit of a good source of carbohydrate in the morning for people who are quite active. And I use a lot of brain power during the day, so it's eggs and sweet potato and avocado, smoked salmon. Sometimes it's just leftovers from the night before, which is also fine. I think people think breakfast needs to be toast and cereal. It's often sweet, but it's actually breakfast can be dinner or vice versa. And for lunch, I usually have a salad, but I like to vary it. And my salads are quite creative. I do a big rainbow salad. I like to see lots of colors from different vegetables, so I get lots of fiber. And I will have either salmon or sardines. I love having sardines for the omega-3. Today I had prawns pan-fried in garlic with garlic, chili, and onion. And make my own dressing, and usually salad is my lunch. That's quick. And for dinner tonight we're making a bolognese ragu sauce with some porcini mushrooms, and I'm making sweet potato noodles with the sort of spiralizer, and we're going to bake them in the oven quickly, and some zucchini noodles as well. So that's going to be a spaghetti bolognese minus pasta.
Awesome.
And that's probably quite a representative sort of day, I think. I try to include, 3-4 times a week, I try to include fish as much as I can, whether it's lunch or dinner, and I vary our protein as much as possible, so it's not just meat or just chicken. And the same with fruit and vegetables. I try to get what's in season, because then we sort of get a variation of stuff. And I'm quite lucky. I have a greengrocer right next door to me, and I just pop over and get whatever I need for the meal, and make that on the day. Yeah.
Good as gold. And that's kind of another thing about the paleo lifestyle, is it's about that variation and seasonal variation, trying to get vegetables and fruits that are in season, so then they're most nutritious, obviously.
And they taste amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, and kind of ideally from as local farms as possible as well.
Yeah, and that's actually another cool thing about paleo is, again, paleo is one of those things. I have a dilemma with the name every now and then, because it really shouldn't even be called paleo. It should just be a normal way of eating and living, and we used to eat and live that way. Now, when I was little, we used to go to the markets and get fruit and vegetables and meat that was brought from the farmers that morning. and we used to grow a lot of our own stuff. So to me, that was quite normal, you know. Now, like years later, I'm in Australia and I'm eating a lot of commercially produced food. Then the eating the seasonally and organically and locally becomes this novelty. But we used to eat that way all the time. And so in a way, paleo is a movement that is reintroducing it back, and which is fantastic. And I often say to people who think that paleo is not sustainable because we eat so much meat, or you know, they think it's anti-vegetarianism almost. But in a way, you know, we advocate meat that is sourced from grass-fed cattle that's been raised humanely and that's been treated really well and it's had a very healthy and happy life. Same with pork and eggs. It's all free-range and pasture-fed, wild, sustainable fish and seafood as much as possible. So I think, in a way, paleo is actually a very eco-friendly way of eating, if that makes sense. It's got a nice ethos behind it, nice philosophy, that I think often gets misrepresented and confused. But yeah, it is a really nice way of getting your life back into that, you know, the way we used to eat.
Absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Irena. Were there any kind of last wise words that you'd like to part with our listeners and viewers?
I think don't be alienated by the name paleo, because if you've always wondered what it is and you've read in the media that paleo this and that, you know, don't take anything for granted. I think try it for yourself. Try it, see how you feel, because it's all about your own body. Nobody else is like you. And see how it makes you feel, how it changes the way you live. And then, as I said, you know, create your own 80-20 rule if you want to. If you want to keep it 100%, that's totally fine. But, you know, adapt it to your own lifestyle. If you're busy, if you have kids, if you have a family to feed, if you travel, try and make it work for yourselves. And it's all about making just small steps, you know, better, you know, it doesn't have to be a huge leap transition. You can just sort of take it a little bit at a time, you know, just try cooking with butter and ghee and coconut oil to start with, you know, ditch the processed oils, and then maybe exclude the wheat, and then maybe exclude the sugar, and slowly sort of get your body back in tune with itself. And yeah, don't be afraid about what other people say and think. It is your body. It doesn't matter what other people say. If you think you're crazy, there are hundreds of thousands of us, if not millions of us, eating that way now. So just give it a go. And, you know, there are so many great resources. My book and my website's like one of hundreds out there. And it's really fantastic that it's growing. It's becoming more mainstream. And, yeah, it's becoming more accessible and approachable, I suppose. So definitely give it a go. See what you think. You know, and you don't even have to call it paleo at the end of the day. You just eat real food.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And people can check out your book by going to smashthefat.com/eat-drink-paleo. That will forward you, straight.
Printed.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful book, and people can kind of check it out on your website there. And they can either get an electronic or fully printed version as well. And then I believe there's a program that you're kind of running as well.
Yeah, so on the back of my website, which is Eat Drink Paleo website, I've partnered up with a nutritional medicine practitioner back in Australia, Claire Yates, and you know, she brings in a lot of nutritional wisdom and a, you know, degree in science, and I bring my cooking kind of you know, prowess. So together we put together like a 28-day program. It's not necessarily paleo, it's more just clean eating and toxic-free living. It's called Rejuvenate program, and we've got a website that we're running together on the back of that called rejuvenatedforlife.com, and it's a website where we move away a little bit from paleo and just cooking, and we focus more on just sort of healthy living and well-being, and we talk a lot about the foods and ingredients specifically, what nutritional value they have, how to make your environment more sort of toxin-free. So it's not just cooking, because cooking is something I love, but I'm also interested in the other stuff. And so Claire and I wanted to try and introduce that lifestyle to the mainstream, maybe to people who are not necessarily interested in paleo specifically. But it's just our way of spreading the message beyond the paleo community. So yeah, check it out. It's rejuvenatedforlife.com, and it's got lots of fantastic, interesting, in-depth articles and recipes as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. Highly recommend everyone to go check that out. Yeah, is there any way that people can kind of get in contact with you via Twitter or Facebook or anything?
Oh yeah, I'm a social media whore. Absolutely. No, I've got I've got a Facebook page, obviously, for Eat Drink Paleo. It's just, if you search for Eat Drink Paleo, you'll find it. On Twitter, I am at Irena Macri, and on Instagram, I'm Eat Drink Paleo. I've got a Pinterest account as well, so I'm kind of, I'm floating around between social media platforms all the time. Or you can shoot me an email, just irena@eatdrinkpaleo.com.au, and I'll try to answer as soon as I can.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
As you said, we're all kind of like digital nomads these days. So yeah, very busy folks. But yeah, highly recommend again. Everybody going to check out Eat Drink Paleo by Irena at smashthefat.com/Eat Drink Paleo. Yeah, Irena, thank you again so much for your time today. And we hope to see you soon. Absolutely, and I'm really looking forward to see where I guess the paleo community goes in the UK and just around the world. And so having these kind of interviews is great because we just get to introduce some new concepts to people. So I really appreciate you having me. No worries, Irene. My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.